Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we have a truly fascinating mission ahead of us. We're going to explore this massive historical paradox.
Yeah, and it's a big one.
It really is. We're looking at the rise of Hellenism, the tactical genius of Alexander the Great, and how his strategy of subtle infiltration completely rewired ancient Jewish life. And he did it without relying on direct military force.
Right, which is it's mind-blowing when you really look at the mechanics of it.
Exactly. But I want to be clear to you listening, this isn't just some dusty history lesson. We're unpacking this because the struggle between ancient spiritual endurance and, modern secular convenience is actually the exact same battle you face today.
No, absolutely. It's the exact same thing.
Right. The parallels between that ancient culture of Hellenism and our modern digital culture, what you might call the Hollywood influence, they are just striking. They both shape what we consume, how we entertain ourselves, and ultimately, how we think.
It really is a mirror held up to our modern lives. I mean, you look at this ancient society and see an entire culture being completely rewired from the inside out.
Yeah.
They started speaking the conqueror's language, participating in the conqueror's customs, adopting their worldview. And the most terrifying part,
What's that?
they didn't even realize they had been conquered until the transformation was almost complete.
Wow. Which, that brings us to a really powerful image to kick things off. I want you to imagine a conquest, but without the usual soundtrack of war.
Right. No swords.
Exactly. There is no clash of swords. There are no battering rams splintering the city gates. There are absolutely no soldiers storming the temple.
Just silence, militarily speaking.
Yeah. Imagine a Greek empire 23 centuries ago conquering God's people without ever firing a single shot at their sacred spaces. They didn't need a military presence in the synagogue.
Because they used other things.
Right. Instead, they used schools. They used sports. They used shops. And they used a stage. Okay, let's unpack this. To understand how a culture is conquered without weapons, we first have to look at the mastermind who designed the blueprint.
Right. And that mastermind is, of course, Alexander the Great. He's arguably one of the most brilliant military and psychological minds to ever walk the planet.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. So he took over from his father, Philip of Macedon, in 336 BC when he was just around 20 years old. And in less than 10 years, he conquered the known world.
Just a massive sweep.
Exactly. Sweeping from Greece all the way to the edges of India before dying at the incredibly young age of 32. But what's fascinating here is that Alexander understood a fundamental flaw in the way empires had always operated.
Okay, a flaw.
Yeah. He grasped something that the Assyrians completely missed, the Babylonians ignored, and, even the mighty Romans failed to fully appreciate later on.
So what was the flaw? Because, from the outside, the old empire seemed incredibly effective at keeping people in line.
Right, but they were only effective in the short term. Alexander realized that the traditional military strategy of fear, it has a very specific shelf life.
Like it expires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The old model of empire building was simple and brutal. It was basically, bow to the emperor or die, worship the crown, or we'll burn your village to the ground.
Yeah, very persuasive in the moment.
Sure, you can hold a sword to someone's throat for a while and they'll comply out of absolute terror. But eventually, people push back. Over generations, fear breeds deep resentment, and resentment breeds rebellion.
Makes sense. You can't sustain that forever.
Right. And Alexander didn't want a fragile empire held together by the constant, exhausting threat of violence. He didn't ask the traditional question of, how do I force obedience?
So what did he ask?
He asked a much more dangerous psychological question. He asked, how do I make them actually want what I want by simply offering them attractive options?
Man, that is such a chilling shift in psychology. It moves completely from coercion to seduction.
It really does. And there is a story about him. And whether it's strict historical fact or, a blended legend, it perfectly illustrates this exact psychological mindset.
Oh, I love this story.
Right. So Alexander marches a small, relatively light company of soldiers up to this heavily fortified, walled city. He stands outside the gates and casually demands their immediate surrender.
Just like that.
Just like that. And the king of this city looks down from his massive stone walls, sees this tiny contingent of Greeks, laughs at him, and shouts down, "You're completely outnumbered. Your forces are tiny. How are you possibly going to pose a threat to us?"
Because the king is thinking in terms of standard military math, right? More soldiers equals victory.
Precisely. But Alexander's response has nothing to do with math or siege warfare. It is purely psychological manipulation.
So what does he do?
Without saying a word to the king, Alexander turns to his own men. He lines them up in a single file line and points them straight toward a sheer cliff just off to the side of the city. Yeah, a cliff that drops hundreds of feet into jagged rocks below, and he gives the order to march. And without a moment of hesitation, one by one, 10 of his own men just walk right off the edge of the cliff to their deaths.
That is just, it's insane.
It is no screaming, no breaking ranks. After the 10th man falls, Alexander calmly tells the rest of the line to hold. He looks back up at the wall.
And the king.
The king is absolutely horrified. I mean, this display of fanatic loyalty and psychological dominance, he just immediately surrenders the city.
Wow. He didn't have to break down a single brick of that wall.
Not one. He was sending a devastating message. I don't need to defeat your army in combat. I just need to break your will.
Yeah.
I need to show you that my paradigm is so completely overpowering that resisting it is futile. Once your will is broken, you'll literally open the gates for me and change your own mind.
And we see that exact same psychological maneuvering when he arrives at the borders of Jerusalem.
I do.
The ancient Jewish leaders, particularly the high priest, they come out to the edge of the territory expecting a bloodbath. They know what conquering armies do. They're bracing for the absolute worst.
Right, they're terrified.
Exactly. But Alexander flips the script completely. He doesn't slaughter them. He doesn't desecrate their holy sites. He actually offers sacrifices to Yahweh.
Which is huge.
It's massive. He acts incredibly humble and reverent. The leaders are so relieved they start calling him a friend of the Jews. He never once tells them to stop worshiping their God. He just casually invites them to add a few more gods to their daily routine.
There's a few more.
Right, just make a little room for Zeus, a little space for Apollo, maybe a shrine to Athena.
It was a brilliantly subtle strategy. You have to remember, the Greek worldview inherently accepted a massive pantheon of gods. There was a deity for, well, every possible occasion, emotion, or natural event.
Right, they had a god for everything.
Exactly. So to the Greeks, offering a buffet of gods wasn't seen as offensive. It was seen as generous and sophisticated. Alexander didn't attack the Jewish faith head-on. He simply diluted it.
He watered it down.
Yes. He made the God of Israel just one dish on a very crowded, very colorful table. And by doing that, he subtly made the people who insisted on only worshiping one God feel small, archaic, close-minded, and kind of out of touch with the modern world.
I love the analogy for this. It's like putting fruits and vegetables into a Vitamix.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
You throw a banana in there, maybe some spinach, a handful of berries, and you blend it all up into one smooth, comfortable mix. You don't feel like you're giving anything up.
Right, the banana's still in there.
The banana's still in there. You're just making room for more ingredients. And culturally, that's called syncretism.
Syncretism is the perfect word for it. It is the blending of differing beliefs and practices into a new homogenized system. And the danger is that it is so gradual.
It sneaks up on you.
It really does. You don't realize your core beliefs have been fundamentally altered until the process is complete. The system doesn't demand you abandon your heritage. It just steadily crowds it out with other highly attractive, convenient options until your original faith is just unrecognizable.
So we have this strategy, this cultural Vitamix. But Alexander didn't just give a philosophical speech and hope the culture would blend itself.
No, he had to build it.
Right. He actually built a massive civic infrastructure to make it happen. He deployed this syncretism through 4 everyday, seemingly harmless avenues of infiltration. So let's look at how he actually executed this. I mean, how do you feed a culture into the blender?
Well, you start with the physical body. The Greeks introduced competitive sports to these conquered regions. They were the inventors of athletics as an organized spectacle.
Like the Olympics.
Exactly. The Isthmian Games, for example, were the major forerunner to our modern Olympic Games. But entering these games wasn't just about physical prowess. It was deeply tied to Greek culture and religion. Well, to compete, you had to abide by 3 strict rules. First, you had to be a free-born Greek citizen, which, immediately pressured ambitious young men to adopt Greek citizenship.
Oh, clever.
Very. Second, you had to compete entirely by their established rules. And third, after a rigorous 10 months of training, you had to swear a sacred oath before the Greek gods, specifically dedicating your performance to the winged goddess of victory, Nike.
Which is wild to think about every time you lace up a pair of modern sneakers.
It really is.
But there's another element here that caused a massive cultural friction point. These athletes trained and competed completely naked. In fact, our modern word gymnasium comes directly from the Greek word gymnos, which literally translates to naked.
And this is a crucial area where the two worldviews violently collided, even if it wasn't a military battle. To the Greeks, the idealized human body was the crowning jewel of the universe. It was meant to be perfected, celebrated, and openly displayed. But the ancient Jewish perspective on the human body and modesty was fundamentally different, rooted all the way back in the Genesis narrative.
In the Garden of Eden.
Exactly. Their historical worldview taught that nakedness was associated with the tragic shame of the garden. When humanity fell, nakedness was something God purposefully covered up. It wasn't a glory to be flaunted. It represented vulnerability, a broken state, and a shame that required protection and modesty.
Okay, I want to push back on this for a second, though, because aside from the shock value of the nudity, what is the actual harm in a foot race? I mean, wait, why was the simple act of running around a dirt track so incredibly destructive to the spiritual fabric of this ancient culture?
Because it introduced a completely foreign psychological concept to them, competition against your own brother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In the ancient Jewish mindset, your neighbor was your teammate. You labored in the fields together, you worshiped together, you survived famines and droughts together.
You needed each other.
Precisely. There was absolutely no concept of a world record book in ancient Jewish culture because the idea of making your brother your enemy for the sake of an individual prize or, civic glory, it was absurd. It went against the entire communal nature of their covenant.
But suddenly, here comes the stadium.
Right. Suddenly, this new infrastructure of athletics rooted a deep, selfish, competitive spirit right into the hearts of the people.
And the level of distraction it caused was just off the charts. We see historical accounts from the 1st century showing that it got so bad, priests were actually abandoning their daily sacred duties in the temple in Jerusalem.
It's unbelievable.
They were sneaking away, crossing the Jordan River to travel to the Decapolis, which was this network of 10 new, glittering, highly Hellenized Greek outpost cities, just so they could sit in the stands and watch naked men run in a race.
That is exactly how powerful and alluring this infiltration was. The very men who were historically assigned to serve the holy altar now preferred the entertainment of the stadium.
It's a complete shift in priorities.
It is. And it was this exact corruption, this blending of the sacred and the profane that drove certain devout groups to their breaking point. This is why the Essenes, a very strict devout sect of Jewish purists, they completely fled mainstream society.
It just packed up and left.
Yeah, they went out into the desert and hid in the caves of Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were later found, just to escape what they saw as the complete cultural and spiritual compromise of the priesthood.
So once the Greeks conquered the body through sports and competition, they immediately targeted the eyes and the attention span. That's the second door.
Right, the marketplace.
Alexander set up these outposts, essentially bustling marketplaces, in every town to disseminate Greek culture. We're talking imported art, daily news from across the empire, exotic spices from around the world. Imagine the ancient equivalent of a global digital news feed landing right on your doorstep, accompanied by, fine pottery and luxury goods.
And again, if we look at the surface, there is nothing inherently evil about a beautiful rug, a piece of art, or a new spice for your food.
Right.
But the danger here was a phenomenon of the slow fade of the eyes. The ancient Jewish people were, by deliberate design, supposed to be a people set apart. Their daily focus, their meditation, was intended to be on God, their covenant, and their community.
And then the shiny new things arrive.
Exactly. Suddenly, their environment is flooded with 1,000 new things to look at, new lifestyles to want, new trends to keep up with.
It's brilliant because it's not outright rebellion. You don't have to publicly renounce your faith. You just get really, really distracted. Your attention is simply relocated.
That's the perfect way to put it, relocated attention.
But distraction is only step 2. To truly conquer a people long-term, you have to rewire how they process emotions and how they worship. And that leads us from the marketplace straight into the mind, through the 3rd and 4th doors, the theater and the school.
The theater was a profound tool for shaping society. The Greeks were the pioneers of dramatic theater. They invented the concepts of tragedy and comedy, and, well, the physical layout of modern amphitheaters still traces directly back to their design.
Oh, absolutely.
King Herod the Great, who was heavily influenced by Hellenism, even built a massive sweeping Greek theater in Bethshan, which was incredibly close to the Jewish center of Nazareth. These theaters were massive arenas designed for the passive absorption of culture.
It's fascinating because the language of the Greek theater actually bleeds directly into the New Testament.
Hmm.
When Jesus is condemning the religious leaders in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 6, he calls them hypocrites.
Right.
He is borrowing a word straight from Greek entertainment. The word hypokritos literally meant an actor who wore a mask.
Yes, the mechanics of ancient theater were very specific. An actor would walk to the edge of the stage, pick up a large, exaggerated mask attached to a stick, and hold it over his face to play a specific part.
Just literally putting on a face.
Exactly. Then he'd put it down and swap it for a completely different mask to play another character. So when Jesus uses that specific term, he is vividly calling the religious leaders actors. He's saying they are just playing a part, pretending to be someone they're not for an audience, much like the performers down in the Decapolis.
And what those performers were acting out was incredibly repetitive and deeply subversive to the Jewish worldview.
Oh, highly subversive.
The plays were often vulgar, and the plot structure was almost always identical. You'd have a mortal couple on stage struggling to get by. Maybe they can't have kids or their crops are failing. They exhaust every human option. They cry out. And then at the very last minute, they pray to a Greek god.
Right, the rescue moment.
Yeah.
Huh.
An actor suspended by ropes would literally swoop in, save the day, and the couple would spend the rest of the play joyously worshiping this Greek deity. They just looped that narrative over and over, week after week, until it was deeply ingrained in the audience's emotional psyche.
It is a masterclass in psychological and cultural conditioning. And the delivery method here is critical to understand. Greek entertainment was entirely passive and highly individualistic.
You're just sitting there.
Exactly. You walked into the theater, you sat down in the dark, isolated in your own personal experience, and you passively let the culture wash over you. You let the actors train your emotions, tell you what to laugh at, what to cry at, and who the ultimate savior was.
Contrast that completely with how God's people traditionally worshipped. Their ancient festivals were intensely active. They were deeply communal.
Night and day difference.
When they gathered, they sang together, they recited scripture aloud, they danced, they shared meals. They didn't sit in the dark silently watching someone else perform a religious duty on a stage. They actively participated in their own spiritual formation.
Which is so crucial for maintaining identity.
Right. Which brings us to the final and perhaps the most insidious avenue of infiltration: the education system.
Ah, yes. This was Alexander's final move for total indoctrination. He built Greek schools everywhere his empire expanded. Now, to understand the friction here, you have to look at how ancient Jewish culture handled education.
It was very different.
Very. It had a very specific, singular, and sacred focus. A 5-year-old child didn't go to school to learn general Greek astronomy or geometry. They went to a place called the Beit Sefer, which translates to the house of the book.
And the curriculum was the Torah. They memorized massive portions of it. But I love the detail here. It wasn't this dry, dusty academic exercise where kids are just rote learning facts.
No, not at all.
When the sacred scrolls were brought out in the community, people would literally stand up in reverence. They would clap, they would weep, they would dance in the presence of the word. They viewed the Torah not as a textbook, but as the literal living breath of God.
Right.
It was the absolute truth, the voice of their creator telling them they weren't alone in the universe.
So if you are a Greek conqueror, how do you counter that level of deep, visceral, absolute devotion to one book?
You can't just take it away.
No, you can't ban the book. If you burn the scrolls, you create martyrs and spark a violent revolt. Instead, Alexander's strategy is far more subtle. He simply broadens the curriculum.
He adds options.
Exactly. He builds magnificent Greek libraries right next door to the local synagogues. And he fills these beautiful new libraries with Greek philosophy, poetry, mythology, and alternative creation stories.
So what does this all mean? How does that actually hijack the culture? It goes right back to the Vitamix metaphor.
Right.
The Greeks didn't destroy the Bible. They just made it one single ingredient in a very large blender. They quietly taught the next generation of youth that the Word of God wasn't absolute objective truth. It was just one philosophical opinion in a vast global marketplace of ideas.
Yep.
They lowered the society's tolerance for absolute truth, 1 degree of comfortability at a time. Expand your mind with Greek education. Celebrate the beauty of the body with athletics. Get informed about the wider world in the marketplace. Be amused and emotionally moved by the theater. Every single avenue is presented not as a weapon, but as a gift.
And that is the ultimate lethal danger of syncretism. Nobody is arrested. Nobody is persecuted. But the culture is entirely hijacked from the inside out.
It's terrifying when you realize how effective it is.
It really is. And we have to look closely at who this entire cultural apparatus was specifically designed to target. The Greeks weren't trying to change the minds of the 80-year-old elders. They weren't trying to convert the established religious leaders.
They were playing the long game.
Exactly. This was a highly targeted, multi-generational campaign aimed directly at the youth and the family unit.
To really grasp the emotional weight of this, picture a young, ancient teenager, a shepherd boy named Yochanan or John. It's a Friday afternoon. He's sitting on a grassy hillside just outside the thriving Hellenistic city of Beth Shean.
Okay, I can picture it.
Up in his village, his family is preparing for Shabbat, the traditional day of rest, quiet reflection, and worship. He can smell the challah bread baking. But down in the valley, the Greek city is coming alive.
You can imagine the sensory pull. He can hear the rhythmic drumming and the music carrying through the fields from the amphitheater. He can see the glowing lights of the bustling marketplace. He can hear the roar of the crowd from the gymnasium as the races begin. He can literally feel the hum of this massive, successful secular city pulling him in. It looks so vibrant. It looks so modern. And yet, it's a system built on everything contrary to the quiet, communal devotion he has been taught by his parents.
And sitting on that hill, as the sun goes down, that teenager has a choice to make. Does he walk back up the hill, hold firm to his ancient identity, and embrace the quiet rest of Shabbat? Or does he walk down into the valley and give in to the glittering allure of the city?
That's a heavy choice.
And the tragic reality of history is that thousands upon thousands of young people walk down the hill. Because the Greeks didn't conquer their enemies on a blood-soaked battlefield, they conquered kids on the edge of town, one ordinary Friday night decision at a time.
And the fallout from those individual decisions was catastrophic. If we connect this to the bigger historical picture, the Greek influence didn't just stay neatly contained in the theater or the gymnasium.
It never stays contained.
Right. It slowly climbed the very steps of the temple in Jerusalem. Remember, the ancient priesthood was supposed to be a sacred familial lineage dedicated to serving God. But eventually, under this cultural pressure, the office of the high priest was literally put up for sale to the highest bidder.
Unbelievable.
It became a political appointment to gain civic prestige. The corruption was total. False messiahs began to appear to capitalize on the confusion. The glory essentially departed from the temple because the people had willfully traded their active, holy devotion for passive amusement and convenient cultural options.
Which brings this entire historical deep dive crashing right into your modern living room. Because, the parallels here are impossible to ignore. Think about modern Hollywood, digital media, and our screen-driven culture.
It's the same playbook.
It is. The enemy today doesn't kick down your door with a battering ram demanding you renounce your faith. Society just smiles and says, keep your faith, that's totally fine. Just add the daily horoscope.
Just add this one little thing.
Right. Keep your Bible, but let the social media algorithm set the menu for your daily intake of truth and values.
We are dealing with the exact same Vitamix.
We truly are. We are handed plate after plate from an endless cultural buffet. We have endless scrolls of information and a constant stream of entertainment that subtly trains our empathy and shapes our values.
All while we sit passively in the dark.
Exactly, staring at a glowing screen. We have built our own modern stadiums, our own massive theaters, and we carry our own algorithmically curated libraries right in our pockets.
The struggle between maintaining spiritual endurance and giving in to secular convenience hasn't changed a single bit in 23 centuries, which leaves us with a really critical, actionable takeaway for your life today.
What is it?
We have to recognize the profound difference between passive media consumption and active participation in our own communities and identities. You cannot just sit in the stands, soaking in the culture, and expect to maintain your strength. Precisely. When an entire global culture is brilliantly engineered to subtly pull your attention away from what truly matters, resisting that pull requires highly intentional active movement.
You have to push back.
You do. It requires consciously stepping out of the dark theater of passive observation. You have to re-engage with the active communal practices, whether that's serving others, gathering with your community, or studying truth that actually anchor your identity.
I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought from the research today. It's a powerful concept to mull over as you look at your own daily routine, your screens, your habits, and your distractions. The quote is this: "Sometimes God presents an open door in your life, not for you to walk through, but to walk past."
Oh, that is a profound and difficult challenge.
Isn't it?
Yeah, just because an option is widely available, just because society presents it as a beautiful gift or a modern convenience, doesn't mean it is meant for you to consume.
So ask yourself, as you navigate the noise of today, which doors are you actively choosing to walk past? Because remember, an empire doesn't ever need to fire a single shot at your temple, as long as it can keep you distracted and entertained in the theater next door.
Thanks for joining us on this hour on the Archive Hour. Join us on our next hour as we bring you more adventures from the Bible.